Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining New Jersey Food Democracy Collaborative September Lunch and Learn. We're excited to provide this program for you today. It's the first part of a new series around civic engagement in the food system, and we're starting with the topic of the state legislative process and state legislative advocacy 101. For those of you who are new to NJFDC activities or lunch and learns, NJFDC is a food system education, organizing, and advocacy network for New Jersey. We are an independent statewide nonprofit food policy council. Lots of states have state level food policy councils, and that's the function that we serve and the kind of organization we are for New Jersey. We have information about food policy councils on our website if you're interested. Our mission is here. It's essentially to grow a grassroots network of empowered, educated, informed citizens, farmers, business owners, eaters, consumers in New Jersey to transform the state's food and agriculture system to be more, to be resilient, safe, equitable, and prosperous for all. And we were established in June 2020, so this year we're celebrating 5 years as the state's Food Policy Council. Today's learning objectives for the program today are to help folks understand the basics of how New Jersey legislature works, have more confidence in and really increasing your comfort level so that you will engage more frequently and more robustly with contacting your New Jersey representatives or engaging on different bills that impact the food system. And then also to help you know and be able to find who your state lawmakers are. Our program today has these, well, it'll go through this sort of flow and progress. We're going to do an overview of the legislative process. We'll talk about how to engage with your home legislative office, keep track of legislation that you're interested in, follow it along the process, and even maybe help nudge it along the process. How to engage with legislators when you're in Trenton, how to, physically when you're there, what are you doing there? Who are you finding? How are you navigating? We'll share some additional resources, and then we'll have some final questions and wrap up. Our presenters on this topic are Mandy Coriston. She's affiliated with several different organizations, but she is on the board of the New Jersey Home Bakers Association. Lou Crescetelli, who is the Chief of Staff for Senator Space in District 24, and Ashley Kerr, who's with the New Jersey Farm Bureau. And we're really grateful and appreciative to have those special guests here today. And through the series that we'll be putting on around civic engagement and food and ag policy, there'll be some other, we're excited to welcome other guest speakers throughout this series. Okay, so I just have a couple things that I think you're just to help ground us in this conversation for those of you who might not be super engaged in, for those of you who are interested in this 101 level, right? Like maybe you're not really engaged on a regular basis in state government or state legislative activities. And so just an overview of what happens at the state level versus other levels of government and advocacy, things that happen at the state level that impact food and farming, all of the budgets for state programs and state agencies, that's state legislative stuff that happens in Trenton. So what is the Department of Agriculture getting funded for? How much are different programs getting funded for? And inside of New Jersey Department of Health or New Jersey Department of Human Services, those are a couple other state agencies that sort of touch the food system. Where what's getting funded and how much, and are those programs functioning in a way that are effective? So that would be more outside of the funding space and more over into the regulations and oversight, transparency, infrastructure and planning. Lots of planning, of course, happens in New Jersey at the local level, but there are some things that happen in the food and ag space, and of course, infrastructure also at the state level. What is New Jersey's policies and programs around climate change, climate adaptation, and environmental policy? That all happens. All those rules, regulations, and programs are developed through legislation. Procurement and purchasing power, public health and nutrition programs, all of these, we have state departments and state agencies and regulations and laws that shape all of these things at the state level. So you could think of it as state legislation defines what things are in the state and how they'll function. So the definition of a farm, do we have a set definition for what a farmer's market is? Those kinds of things are defined through state legislation. And then also who is involved and who gets to be at the decision-making tables where where important decisions that influence the agriculture sector or food access are happening. So those would all be defined through legislation or regulations as well, just to give a real high level overview. And some examples of why state level advocacy matters in New Jersey and in any state, but here some examples are, this is a kind of a combination list of things, successful legislation that's already been passed and enacted, and things that are still in the process that can use our attention. So increasing the minimum monthly SNAP benefits per household in New Jersey, that is something that passed in 2023, raised from the national minimum. It's now $95 a month is the minimum monthly SNAP benefit for households. Local food for communities. We have a local food for schools bill that's still in the process. It passed in the assembly and it's in a pretty far along point in the Senate. So that can happen through state level advocacy. Value added loan program. There's a bill S1879 that would create a value added product loan program for farmers. Cottage food laws, they weren't created through, well, they were created through state level advocacy, but not, they were created through a regulatory change and then codified later by legislation. Funding for farmland preservation, and the list goes on and on and on. And so I did add a QR code here that takes you to the NJFDC bill tracker, where we do organize and track a range of many bills that are moving their way through the legislative process that align with our 4 policy priority areas. So that is it for my overview. I'm going to now turn it over to Mandy, and I'll just do a quick introduction of Mandy while I'm making that switch. So let me just quickly spotlight you. Mandy, Mandy Coriston is a food systems writer and consultant, and she, as I mentioned before, is on the board of the New Jersey Home Bakers Association. She serves also on the leadership board of the North American Food Systems Network. She's very involved on a couple different working groups for New Jersey Food Democracy Collaborative over the past 5 years. And she's involved in her municipal government through, I believe it's Environmental Commission, and she's done that for a number of years. And so she's really familiar with also municipal level advocacy as well. And she's very serious and passionate about civic engagement, not just in food and agriculture and environment, but in general about exercising our responsibility. Mandy and I share that passion for civic engagement and wanting other folks to understand the power that they have as democratic citizens. And so that's why we're working on this together, and we're excited to bring it to you. So I'll turn it over to Mandy. I think you're going to share your screen, right, Mandy? So I'll stop sharing mine and let you do that, and I'll continue to let folks in. Just as a reminder, as you join, make sure you stay on mute because we do have this set up as a meeting and not a webinar. We like to do it that way.
Yes, I am going to share my screen. I have a few slides to share, and then I also popped the link for the NJ Ledge website in the chat if people want to play along as we go through. Can we see my screen yet?
We can see it. It's just not in presentation mode yet. It's
there we
in
go.
the editing mode.
There we go. Are we good?
Yep.
Is that big
Okay,
enough for
thank
everybody
you.
to see? Okay, cool.
Yep.
So again, this is real 101 level stuff. So some of these things you may already know, and some of them might be new to you, but we're going to really start with the basics, which is that in New Jersey, we have a 2-house legislative system, a bicameral system. So that's similar to the United States federal model, as well as the model used by 48 of the 49 other states. And does anybody know what the state is that has a unicameral legislative system? There's only one. No, nobody's
If
raising
I
their hands. It
answer,
is no anybody but Lou. Anybody but Lou. It is Nebraska. Nebraska has a unicameral house. It is the smallest state legislature with 49 senators who serve 4-year terms. So that's interesting if you want to bust that out on trivia night. So in Trenton, our bicameral model is two houses. It is the Assembly and the Senate. And for each of our 40 legislative districts, there's two assembly persons and one senator. So we've got 80 assembly persons, 40 senators. That equals one New Jersey legislature. So the state legislature also has leadership positions similar to our federal government. So we have a Senate president, an assembly speaker, and then there are a lot of other leadership roles for the majority and minority parties, as well as our committee chairs. So, if you want to play along on the legislative website, there is a way to see all of this in this very strange sort of boxy PDF that they have. And keep in mind, this is the path of a perfect bill. This is a bill that gets introduced, everybody loves it, it goes screaming through both houses, and then it goes to the governor and it gets signed. That's not always how it works. That is not always how it works. But because this is a really base level stuff and we want to make sure that you understand the basic process and the basic terminology, we're going to pretend this is a perfect bill. And Lou, you'll get a chuckle out of this. When I was thinking about what a perfect bill would be, I was thinking about the varsity letters bill that Senator Space had co-sponsored a couple of years ago, that just kind of went sliding on through because everybody went, yeah, that's a great idea. Other extracurriculars should have varsity letters. Um, so every bill starts with an idea, whether that is an idea that a legislator has on their own, whether that is an idea that you as an individual or a group or a professional association take to your legislator and say, hey, we want to do this. It starts with an idea. Now, that legislator might decide to sponsor that bill by themselves. They may speak with other colleagues within their party or with, bipartisan sponsorship in other parties. But if they decide it's a viable idea, all the available information goes to what's called the Office of Legislative Services. And that's where the bills are researched and they're drafted by a staff of people who are super knowledgeable in all of this kind of stuff. So those are your first couple of steps. Once a bill is authored, it needs to be introduced in either one or both houses. And most bills will have an identical, how do we say this? An identical copy, with a different bill number. So if it's got an S in the front, it's a Senate bill. If it's got an A in the front, it's an Assembly bill. So it goes for its first reading. And once that happens, it needs to get referred to the appropriate committees. And some of the committees that we see with our food system bills are economic development, the committees that deal with agriculture, health and human services. So the Senate or the Assembly, where it's first read, will decide, okay, this is the committee where this should go. Then it goes to committee. That's the next step. Once it's heard and voted upon in the committee, if it's a positive vote, it goes back to the House for a general vote. So then it gets scheduled by the leader of that House, either the Senate President or the Assembly Speaker, and it's read. Just the title most of the time. If there's any discussion to be had, there can be amendments made at that time. And then it will be scheduled again for what's called a third reading. So that's your 3R. And that's when it's discussed, it's debated, it's voted upon. So once it has gone through this process in both houses, it has been introduced, gone to committee, gone back to the General Assembly or the Senate, and been voted positively. That's when it goes to the governor's desk. When the governor signs it, he has the power to sign it as is. He can conditionally veto the bill and send it back for amendments. Veto it absolutely. And if it's anything that has a line item or a budget appropriation, those line items can also be vetoed individually. There's a more in-depth view of this process on the legislative website. And instead of taking my slides down, I'll just tell you if you want to see that, you would go to the homepage for the website. And on the very right, the first drop-down menu is the legislature. You would scroll down to lawmaking process and then click. When that page opens, there's a little link that says path of legislation. And when you open that, there's a really great PDF in there that's got boxes that show that path. And it also talks about some of the more conditional things that can happen to these bills. But again, we're talking about a bill in a perfect world. Everybody good so far? All right. So, why do we engage in the legislative process? In my mind, and maybe others might have more reasons, but for me, we can break it down into just two main reasons. And we want to do something that isn't under an existing state statute. and we want to change an existing statute. So, for example, selling a food item or a value add item that isn't currently regulated is something that would fall under something that isn't under an existing statute, right? So, for instance, obviously, I'm very heavily involved in our cottage foods. We didn't have cottage food regulations. We wanted to be able to sell cottage foods, not just home bakers, but farmers, other groups that wanted to do value added products without having to use a commercial kitchen. It didn't exist. So you go through the legislative process to find a way to make a new rule exist that regulates or governs the thing that you want to do. Another example might be that if existing laws preclude a farm-based activity or an income stream that you want to add to your business model. A good example of that is wineries that want to be able to do events, or those sorts of things. Agritourism is a big one. So we have regulations that may or may not cover what you want to cover. And if you're not covered, then you would want to perhaps put some legislation in motion that covers what you want to do. And when you want to change an existing statute, that could be things like an outdated state governed income cap or a licenseship requirement for your industry. So, if you're in field crops or if you're in dairy, if you farmers market, those sorts of things. If it's anything that's governed and there's an income cap or a licensure requirement, etc., that may be outdated, may have changed with the times. You might want to get the income cap raised because inflation is a real thing. Things are more expensive. You want to be able to price your products appropriately without hitting that income cap. That's something that you might want to think about. And technology plays a big role in changing existing statutes as well. So if your industry does business very differently than it used to, or if you want to do something that involves a new technology and it's not under the way things are in an existing statute, you want to make sure that your state regulations reflect those changes, and a legislative path might be a way to do that. Again, this is just a few of the many, many, many low-level, personal, intimate, or big, high-level professional organization reasons that you might want to push for new legislation. So, legislation should always seek to fill a need or to open up new opportunities. So, does anybody, are we good so far? Am I going too fast?
Do you
I know
want
it's a
to?
lot of stuff.
No, I mean it's I think it's great. Do you want to take like a question or a clarifying question or two in between slides, or
Yeah.
do you want to wait till the
Or yeah, we could wait
I don't
till we're
have
done
one,
or
but
wait till the end.
yeah. If I guess
Again,
maybe
this
if
is being recorded and a lot of this is in some of our written resources as well. So
yeah.
we'll talk about where you can find this information again once we're done.
And I think if folks have questions, you can please put them into the chat and I'll field them and go through. And if it's something that I think needs to be clarified in real time rather than waiting for Q&A, we can do that.
So I'm actually gonna go over. You guys can still see my screen? Can everybody still see my screen?
Yep, we're looking at the
Okay.
NJ
All
legislation.
right. So one of the first things that you need to do is know who your legislators are. Um, it can be, oh, I know where their office is, or I know who my senator is, but maybe not my assembly person, or we just had an election and I don't know who the new people are. So that sort of thing. So when you want to engage with your legislative office at home, and if you have an issue, your home legislative office is often the really, really best place for you to start. Um, you can just click this find your legislator, and it gives you several options. You can look at your district map if you know what district you live in. Um, you can add your address and it'll tell you what district you live in, which is kind of cool. I live up here in 24, which is all of Sussex and parts of Hunterdon and Morris. Um, or you can also look at the district list if you know what district you look in. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways for you, excuse me, to find your legislative office. But once you do, you can click and you can look at the information for that office, and it'll tell you who your legislators are. It'll tell you where the home offices are. It will tell you how to get in touch. And then there's also these really cool contact your legislator, direct send buttons. So that's really cool. So nobody knows how to, if you don't know how to do that, that's how you do that. It's as simple as a few clicks, and it's much nicer since they revamped the Ledge website a couple of years ago. It used to be a little bit trickier to navigate. So go back to my PowerPoint for a second. So contacting your legislatures, we just went through and we said, see how can you find them? They're on the Ledge website. You can search for them several different ways. Um, But when it's time to contact your legislative office, you want to be prepared to discuss your concerns and your ideas, do a little bit of research. And a big thing that I tell everyone that I talk to, whether it's on a municipal level, local, organizational level, know your ask, right? You want to be able to come in with a clear idea of what you're asking for. And some tips for doing that is you can look to other states. For cottage food, and this is really cool, for cottage food, there's a website called forager.com. It's two R's, Forrager.com. And they're run by a gentleman named David Craybill, who will actually track the cottage food laws in every state, and he updates them on his website, and he grades them by, are they good, are they not good, the different portions of the thing. So other industries also have this as well. So you can look to other states. Are there similar laws, regulations, or statutes in place elsewhere? Are they working? And if you can find data to support that success, that's really good too. You can say, hey, I want to do this thing. Pennsylvania, Colorado, Texas is also doing this thing, and here's how it's working for them, and here's how I can prove that it's working for them. Um, the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have, two or three main talking points to describe why you want to see this new legislation. Who will it benefit? How will it benefit them? Do you have data to support that? Think of them like mini elevator speeches. You want to say, this is why we need this. This is how it will benefit, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can come up with two or three of those really strong talking points, then you've got a really great basis for, backing your argument, as it were. Um, and the other thing to remember is to keep it simple. So when you have one big issue or a handful of small related issues, that's great because you can create those talking points out of that. And that's something that could become a viable piece of legislation. But if you've got 10 different points on 12 different topics, that's not really going to work to be able to be boiled down into what is the legislative action we can take here. So you want to make sure that you're looking at it from a quality, not a quantity standpoint in a way, because if you've got one issue with a couple of related issues that can be resolved with one piece of legislation, that's going to be a lot more successful in terms of getting that piece of legislation written and in motion than if you come with a hodgepodge of things and say, hey, can we write a bill about this? That hodgepodge may end up being 5, 6, 7 different pieces of legislation. So that's really something to remember. So simplicity is key because if it's a viable idea, OLS is there. Your legislature or the legislators that you're working with will say, okay, cool, let's take this data, let's take this information, the specific data set, the specific ask, we'll send it to OLS and see what they can do. And then the brilliant people at OLS who do all the research and the drafting and the language, they will do their best to turn that idea into a viable reality piece of legislation. Okay, cool. Does anybody have any questions about that before I turn it over to Lou to talk about engaging with your home office? There a question in the chat? Oh, no. Okay. So I do want to introduce Lou. I do live in Lou's district. Lou has been a longtime staffer for the District 24 legislative office here up in the northwest corner of New Jersey and currently leads the staff for Senator Parker Space and has put up with my nonsense for a long time and very kindly agreed to come here and be with us today. So thank you, Lou. I appreciate it.
Mandy, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you and Janine for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. Um, I The other reason why I wanted to participate is that food and ag issues also have a special place in my heart. I started working for the legislature off and on since 1998. But when I was in college, I worked 3 summers for the Rutgers and Cook College Research Center in Upper Deerfield. My grandfather came to New Jersey during World War II to work for Seabrook Farms in South Jersey, and on my dad's side, his family established Schifferlalio Farms on the Franklin Township, Buena Borough border. So a shout out to Lauren and Kathy from Cumberland County that I see on the Zoom. So I'm a South Jersey farm boy at heart, and that's how I grew up. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you again for having me on. Um, Everyday citizen activists can have a major impact on the legislative agenda in Trenton. When legislators hear from their constituents, they take notice. In my opinion, the most effective way of grassroots lobbying is within the legislative district. Emails, faxes, letters, and phone calls are all vital in order to defeat or pass a piece of legislation. The other thing I recommend is meeting with your legislators either from time to time or when an issue is coming up, either in person and now through technology, through Zoom. Um, Legislators, and us as staff members, we want to hear from our constituents. Meetings are very important. And then the next thing after a meeting is follow-up. You should always have a point person memorializing your meeting with a legislator, and do a follow-up in an email. This is what we talked about, and this is what you think is going to happen, we think is going to happen, etc. Why I think this is very important is, believe it or not, legislators don't have all the answers on their own. They are not experts on every single issue that's going to be in front of them. So it's very important to hear from people who either professionally are experts or professional government affairs people who will bring in the experts. And it's very important. I worked for former Congressman Frank Lobiondo for a number of years, and he has I didn't grow up at the shore, but he had parts of the Jersey Shore. He has the Delaware Bay Shore. So in a hurry, I had to learn about pilings, boating channels, dredging, docks, and beach replenishment in order to be conversant of what issues are important to the Jersey Shore economy, and what, meeting with fishermen and meeting with boat captains and meeting with, different people involved in the economy at the shore. You need to be conversant and need to understand what their needs are. So that's like one example why it is important that legislators hear from people concerning various topics, because, like I said, there's stuff that's going to be in front of legislators that they may really not know all the ins and outs and why this is important to you. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going to be lobbying for something or advocating against something, that we are not experts on everything, yet we have to be. We have this great responsibility. My bosses have this great responsibility to vote on matters, introduce legislation, etc. That has a major impact on everyday life in New Jersey. So just keep that in mind when you're advocating for things. So, like for example, I met with a Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia and myself met with a constituent last year who was a cottage food baker, and telling us she's having all these problems with the Department of Health. What's the first thing I did? I reached out to the Home Bakers Association, and Mandy replies, and and what was going on was a problem statewide. It wasn't just an isolated issue. And we wrote to the Department of Health, and we had to write again to the Department of Health because of what was going on. So because of Mandy's expertise, we were able to start the process of trying to get some change, which we're still working on. So that real world experience really was a big help to us. So, Mandy, thank you again. Now in that situation, as of now, it's something that it can be fixed administratively. So it wouldn't have to go in front of the legislature to create a bill and go through the whole legislative process, which is never a guarantee. What Mandy, I guess, left out, I'm sure you're all familiar, it took a lawsuit and a judgment to allow home baked goods to be manufactured, produced and sold in this state. The legislature failed to even enact it, so that had to been done after a court case in the rulemaking process in the Department of Health. So nothing, even something a judge agrees with, even the legislature didn't even act on it. So, which leads me to now the legislative process, and a little bit I want to tag on. Does anyone know who can write a bill? Anyone?
Who can introduce a bill, or who
No,
could
who
write
can
a
write a bill? Who can actually write a bill? Anyone can write a bill. Anyone can write a bill and meet with a legislator or present it to a legislator for introduction. So many ideas that have happened throughout the years have been from, talking with constituents. I have a problem, and a good example from another state that I was involved with many years ago was in the state of New Jersey. There was no uniform policy in schools of how twins are treated. So it was basically up to either the individual school, the school district, the teachers, the principal of, hey, we separate twins, no questions asked. That's what we do. You're in a different homeroom. We're going to put you in different classes, etc. And that policy, we had a constituent complain and came to us with Minnesota's law about that. It's up to the parents to decide, unless the courses are, especially in high school when you have advanced level courses and not, or if there was legitimate disciplinary problems, that disruptions and so forth. So now we worked with Lou Greenwald at the time, who was father of twins, and we, got Minnesota's bill passed. And that came from a constituent with a problem, and we were able to get a law enacted. So in those situations, we would take the bill draft, the Office of Legislative Services, who basically act as our attorneys, for lack of a better word. Not all of them are attorneys, but that's our counsel, that's our research arm. Would put the bill draft into the format that's germane to New Jersey statutes, and once our constituents, or once the legislators support it, this looks good, it would be introduced. So after we introduce a bill, the Senate President or the Assembly Speaker will move the bill into a committee of reference. So it's no secret, my boss is at District 24. We're in the minority in both houses. So when we have a good idea that we think could pass, it's all right, which Democrat can we get to sign on? A lot of times we'll go to the committee chair. Hey, you like this? Oh, yes. Oh, some committee chairs are very open to this kind of thing. Some are different, but we have to figure out strategically, how can we get something moving. So a lot of times, the bipartisanship, is a good thing when it comes to ag issues or food banks and that sort of thing. So you get a lot of no's. but then the process is now you got to get a committee hearing. So where citizen, activists like yourself, hey, we have a bill, it's bipartisan. Everyone's got to reach out to the committee chair to either meet with the committee chair, emails, et cetera, reaching out. We do our part of asking the committee chair to place the bill on a committee agenda. They set the agenda, but in each house, the speaker or the Senate president will give the final okay on an agenda. So, even though you'll be hounding the committee chairman, sometimes it's not up to them, and hey, it's above my head, and that is an answer you do get. But that's pretty much the underlining of trying to get especially coming from the minority side, something passed that should be a no-brainer, is well worth it to an industry or to helping people. So that's what you have to do. So I left for Mandy, and if Mandy would want to email some things. I did a rundown of the state legislative website, where to find things, and how to navigate it, so you can use it when you're lobbying on a bill or trying to find research on a bill. So if you want to, Mandy, if you want to send that to everybody after the Zoom call, that would be
Sure.
fine
Lou,
by
did you
me.
email
Yeah.
that directly to me?
Yeah, I did this morning. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was
So
out
I
at the cooperative extension
apologize.
this morning,
It's not
so.
yeah, I'm not that technological to do a PowerPoint, so I apologize for that. But
No,
with
that's
that,
okay. We'll definitely include that with the resources that go out with this webinar.
yeah, and with that, if there's any questions for me, I'd gladly for a couple minutes if you want to do any now.
No, that's great. And I really appreciate, Lou, that you pointed out, and I think this is a point here for us to highlight in terms of our role. Is like a lot of time, you highlighted the difference between the person who's sponsoring the bill, and that could be your home legislator, your district legislator who you've met with, and you said this is a problem, and they've gone through the process where it's actually gone through OLS and the bill got introduced, you found a co-sponsor, all of that. And the difference between like when you would contact the sponsor or co-sponsor of a bill versus when you're going to want to contact, or when as an advocacy group we would be sending out an action alert and encouraging people to contact the committee chair of where the bill is placed in a committee, based on the topic or whatever. That if once it's assigned to that committee, nothing happens until the committee chair decides to put it on a committee agenda, and it could never go to committee agenda. So like just getting it introduced is really just the very first part, right? Then you have to actually get the committee chair to hear it in a committee hearing. And that's where a lot of times you'll see NJFDC sending action alerts around, call this committee chair or co-chair and ask them to put this bill on an upcoming committee hearing agenda, right? So that's just one of the points where we would come in and direct people, and it's like it's helpful for people to understand. I think, like, why are we asking you to contact this random person? Well, they're not a random person. They're in charge of this committee where our bill is, right? Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, and I think when Ashley comes in, she's going to talk a little bit more about that sort of stuff in depth. But Lou, I want to thank you for being here, but also thank you for pointing out sort of validating what I was saying about look to other states, right? Look to what other places are doing. And Janine, you and I do this a lot. Like,
Yeah,
hey, what kind of literature is this Food Policy Council putting out? What are their policies, that sort of thing. So it's really important, and I want to drive home that point to look over other people's shoulders. What are they doing? What's working in other
yeah.
plays, and how can it work here for us in New Jersey? Does anybody else have
I'm
any other
interested.
questions for Lou? Oh, I'm sorry, Janine.
No, go ahead. You're doing the right thing, asking asking for other questions.
Yeah,
Now's the
no, I
time.
just
You can unmute and ask Lou a question, or Mandy, and then we're going to move on. We have two other sections to go through before we conclude. So Does anyone have any questions for Lou? We're lucky to have him here. Anyone in Lou's district? Maybe Meg? No, Meg, you're a little east of there, right? Well, that was really, really helpful. I had a question about the state examples, like legislation from other states, from your personal perspective, Lou, and the perspective of your experience working for different lawmakers. Are there certain states where lawmakers don't want to see examples from? Like in my experience, I feel like New Jersey is not always thrilled to hear like, oh, look what they're doing in California, or look what they're doing in, I'm trying to think of another state where that would be the case, but and this would just be like your own perspective, obviously, like there's no facts around this, but like are there certain states where you feel like lawmakers are kind of like rolling their eyes like don't find an example from a different state?
Well, it would depend on the issue, I think,
Yeah,
more
it's
than
true.
more than anything. I mean, so, you know, I would say in the wheel overall in the wheelhouse that your support, everyone on this call, the work you do, and the issues you're concerned about. Really, if California is doing something good on this on an ag issue that everyone can sit and agree with, it doesn't matter,
Okay.
So it would just depend on it would just depend on the issue more than anything, I would say. you know uh
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Ricardo, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question. For some folks that might work in like within the field that they're also speaking to their legislator about, when would be the time to come in as a constituent versus as a professional? And is it sometimes better to try to come in as that constituent, bringing the issue to the table and leaving that professional perspective? A lot of people that sometimes maybe get these push and calls are related to the fields that they're talking about, but being also constituents, like, is that, a bigger ticket sometimes? Do you have any thoughts on that?
no, I would say for the most part, you kind of have a dual, I would say, a dual track. I mean, what's most important to any I mean, is the people that reside in our district. We all represent roughly 225,000 people that, we're their specific voice for. So fortunately, being in a district with a lot of ag, um, you know, that comes natural to us. Now, uh, the other thing, concerning expertise, you also look at what committee assignments um, a legislator may have. So you may want to meet with legislators because like Assemblywoman Fantasia is on ACE, um, Commerce, Economic Development, and Agriculture. So there are a lot of issues that you're directly concerned about that might be popping up on an agenda, because I'd be assuming you'd be meeting with the chair of the committee because that's in your wheelhouse too. So it's kind of a dual track of what issues, what committees the members on, and their own constituents. Um, like for instance, um, none of the three legislators in District 24 are attorneys or serve on any kind of committee really dealing with any kind of legal things. So you wouldn't, if you wanted to talk about some complex, if you're not a constituent, some complex legal thing that only attorneys would understand, and that you'd like to see something introduced, we'd be the wrong people for you to talk with. So that's what I'm saying, like a dual track. The Assemblywoman Fantasia is on the education committee, so K-12 education, and preparing kids for the world. It's something, yeah, you know, um, something in the wheelhouse. Assemblyman Ganamort's on the Transportation Committee and the Environment Committee. Um, and he's on oversight. So the one thing on the oversight committee has been a lot of cannabis. Seems like they've moved all the cannabis stuff into that committee. So he's constantly, there's cannabis advocates always wanting to meet about something, either pro or con. So that to me is the best way to direct. If you're going outside your legislative district, usually needs to be something you would think they would be interested in, or because of their committee assignments, they're gonna have to deal with it at one point or another.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Great,
no problem.
great question. Great answer. Okay, so we're just as a reminder, this is a 1.5 hour lunch and learn, so it's till 1:30. We have a couple other parts of the program and another speaker coming on soon. So Lou, I hope you can hang out till the end.
Sure.
Totally understand if you can't, but we're really grateful for your time and thank you for covering that important part of the program. Mandy, we're going to switch it back over to you now. Is that right?
Yes, I am going to, it goes back to me until Ashley gets here, and then she's going to
Yeah.
talk about some more of the ins and outs of the legislative process stuff. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen just for a moment, perhaps, maybe. Because, okay, are we back to sharing my screen? Can everybody see that?
Yes.
We can see my screen? Yes, excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to build support for your bill, for your cause, for your thing, whatever this thing is you were fighting for. You want to be able to build support for that, so that other people know about it and other people can talk to legislators about it. So while your bill's being authored and introduced, it's a really good idea to time to start building up support if you haven't already been talking about it to anyone who will listen. Not that I'm ever guilty of that. None of us are, I'm sure. So you want to find like-minded individuals and groups. Social media is really great for that. You can engage with people on existing pages and existing groups. You can start your own group or your own page. Um, Another great way is to seek and join trade or professional associations, people who may be doing work all over the country in the same area that you're doing work. And again, that's a really great place to gain some insight as to what's going on in other places. In this day and age, we don't have to walk around with a clipboard anymore to sign a petition. There's some really great digital petition sites. You can do a petition or a sign-on letter for the public to show support for your legislation, and that's something that you could then deliver digitally or print it out for impact and deliver to a legislative office. Or you can alternatively or additionally have contact campaigns via phone, email, fax machines, smoke signals, just any way you really want to spread the word. You can employ contact campaigns among the people you know. You can have contact campaigns that are directed to a legislative office, or to a trade association, or whoever the target of that communication is. Um, and then another thing you want to do is become familiar with the state agencies that are involved in regulating or governing what it is that you want to legislate. So for food system bills, obviously Department of Agriculture or Department of Health are the two big ones. There's also the Economic Development Authority. I mean, it really does depend on what exactly your legislation involves, but you want to make sure you're involved with the governance and the structure of those agencies, familiarize yourself with who the commissioners are, the ins and outs. If find somebody that works in that office and start, network and form a relationship with them so that you can have conversations about your legislation. And the other thing I encourage is to do digital meetups. And I didn't put this on the slide, but you know, everybody can Zoom these days, right? You can say, hey, do we want to chat for half an hour on Thursday evening about these issues? And you just set it up and have an open place where people can talk about it. Or if you want to meet in person, grab an American Legion Hall or an ambulance building and make some coffee and chat. Because when we work together, that's when we really get things done. So we really want to, I just want to say that use that digital technology to your advantage because it allows us to make so many connections and do so much great research without having to ever even leave the comfort of our homes these days. So I just really encourage that. So I'm gonna escape out of my my PowerPoint here. And maybe. See, I knew the technology was going to fail me at some point today, Jenny.
You're doing it. Just needs a minute.
I mean, go back to the Ledge website for a minute because before Ashley joins us and talks about some of the ins and outs of engaging in Trenton and getting yourself around and what testifying means and all those good things. If you have a bill and you want to track a bill or you want to find a bill, you need to know how to do that on the legislative website because that's going to show you and that's going to teach you and tell you a lot of information. So The
I
first
think
thing
it
I
would be
really,
great, Mandy, if to have people like do it along with,
I
like
did,
have their Zoom
yeah,
open and do it along
yeah,
with you, like open it up and follow the steps in real time. You're encouraged to do
yes.
that.
Yes, you're encouraged to play along. I did actually put that in the chat a little while ago. So if you want to play along on the legislative website, to do that. So I was laughing because I told Janine last night I actually unsubscribed to a couple of our big and FDC tracked bills because I wanted to resubscribe to them today to show you guys how to do it. So, um, yeah. So if you're on the Ledge website, you want to go to Bill and you go to Bill Search. This gives you the opportunity to look back. Actually, it's pretty crazy. You can look back quite a ways if you know what year a bill was introduced. It's on the 2024-2025 session right now because 25-26 hasn't started yet. So that will start soon. But if you're looking for a bill, you want to start on your bill search. So if you have your bill number, you can type it in here and you always want to remember your S's and your A's. So 4350 is the urban ag bill that FTC is really interested in right now. So what it'll show you here is the total record. And if you click on it, it'll tell you everything that has happened to this bill since it was introduced. So it shows you the history of the bill. It shows you that it was in the Senate Budget Appropriations Committee. You can look at all of the information for it. And if you want to follow this bill and get information on it sent to your email, which is super cool, you click on the plus where it says subscribe to bill and it says subscribed. If you have a legislative website account, which means you have a login, it will add to your list. If you don't, it will prompt you to create a login with your email address so that it knows where to send you that information. So if I go up here to my name where it says Coriston Mandy, there's a list of all the bills that I subscribe to. Um, It'll show you the identical bill number for the Senate or for the Assembly if it's a Senate bill, Senate if it's an Assembly bill, etc. Um, and then the other thing you can do is you can search by keyword, you can search by sponsor, and you don't even have to type it in. You can just pick the sponsor from the drop down. You can pick from the subject, agriculture, at farmland preservation. So there are many, 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 many choices of subject for your bill member. And the other bill, I just want to show you, that's our local food for schools bill, if you're not already following it, is A 3742. And this is another policy priority bill for FDC. Um, and that will show you all of the action on that bill thus far. And again, when you see these acronyms here, they're just they're acronyms for the committees. So ACE, ABU, those are acronyms for the committees. And again, I'm going to resubscribe to that.
Mandy, maybe
And
now is a good time to walk folks through like when you're actually looking at a bill, all the different the way that information is organized. So like you showed them, if it's a Senate bill, the equivalent Assembly bill would be listed, but and then the prime sponsors, the co-sponsors,
yes,
and then the history of the bill. And
yes.
then it gets a little tricky here under the introduced statement, fiscal, like sometimes it's confusing to know which one is the actual bill from that list of different PDFs.
Yeah, so the introduced means that is the bill in its raw form. That is the bill as it was originally introduced to the House that it was introduced to. Um, and then, so this one was introduced and referred to the ACE, which is the Assembly Commerce, Economic Development, and Agriculture Committee. So then it went to ACE. And if you click on PDF format on the statement from ACE, this is a statement that the committee has put out about this bill. So you can see the date on here. It's in regards to Assembly Bill 3742. It's got committee amendments on it. So if you read through it, it will tell you this essentially this is what we liked and this is what we didn't like. Is I guess the best way to break it down. So it will include some things about here's how we would like to see this amended, etc. So then I know that we're getting deep into the terminology stuff here, and And I do want to talk about that a little bit more, but so then the fiscal estimate, because this is a bill that would have appropriations in the state budget. So the fiscal estimate. So can you say fiscal estimate 5 times fast? The this is a statement saying this is how much we think that this would cost, essentially. And if it ever loads. So this would be the estimate that all the other committees would look at, the General Assembly or General Senate would look at, that the Budget Appropriations Committees would look at to determine exactly how much money would be or could be devoted to this bill based on this estimate of what the bill would do. Does that make sense? I'm trying to keep this so not
Yeah, and of
complicated.
course, not every bill has an estimate. Not every bill has an
Yes.
appropriation. Not, some bills are
Yes.
just trying to change something and not, it doesn't cost any money. It's just changing the way regulation is,
Right.
some of the other reasons that Mandy talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I do see
So
that
then if
Ashley has joined us, just as a
she
heads up.
did. Sweet.
Yeah.
So let me just finish up the couple of other things I was going to talk about on the Ledge website, and then we'll move to Ashley. Does that sound good? So Ashley has a minute to settle in.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, kind of I lost my place now. Um, so yeah, so the other thing I wanted to show everyone on the website was if you go back to the homepage, is finding, oh, actually, I'm going to pop my PowerPoint back up for just one more second. So once you track a bill and it emails you, you get fun emails. So this first screenshot I have is from an amendment that was made to our cottage food regulations once that they were put into place. So there was a bit of a snag about honey. Um, and it was accidentally, and I'm using that term loosely, it was accidentally put on the cottage food list where it should not have been, because honey is a raw animal product and should be regulated by the Department of Ag where it belongs. So we had to quickly make an amendment to that. So this bill was exempts raw unprocessed honey from DOH cottage food regulations. And then you can see that it just goes through the entirety of everything that happened to that bill. So it was first reading, it was introduced, it was gone and done and done and done. This is one of those quote unquote perfect bills that went, oh yeah, that was screwy, we need to fix that. And it just went through from start to finish without any issues. So that's lovely. Um, so then the second screenshot is one, and I apologize because I don't save these anymore, but apparently I used to. So my screenshots are from really old emails that I dug up. So this one was actually during the COVID shutdown, and it was about movement for a committee hearing, and it actually included notes on testifying during the COVID shutdown and how people could join the meeting to testify via Zoom through the legislative homepage. But so anytime a bill moves, if you're subscribed to it, you will get one of these fun little telegraph type emails that are just this run-on sentence telling you what happened to the bill, where it's going, and if there's any date of action scheduled. So that's kind of cool. So I'm gonna actually go back. So that's what happens once you subscribe to a bill. And then the other thing I was going to show you before I am done and I turn it over, was understanding the legislative calendar, the schedule, and using the calendar. This is super important. So there's nothing scheduled because the legislature is still out for a little bit. They haven't resumed their fall session yet. So, but all of these dates, if they're colored in, that's a date of action. So if you click on this one, it shows you everything that was going to happen that day. So a Senate quorum, Community and Urban Affairs Committee, Labor Committee, and Education Committee. And then if you were to click on the committee itself, it will show you all of these really useful things. It will tell you when the committee is going to meet. It tells you exactly where they're meeting. So in the committee room 1 on the first floor of the State House Annex, it gives you links directly to the chair, vice chair, the membership, archive proceeding, because this meeting is already over. That would click you over to a link of the recording of this meeting. So you could go back and listen to it. And you can always watch live proceedings through the legislative website as well. If you're not able to go to Trenton, you can watch these committee meetings and see what's going on. So this is just a list of the bills that were heard in that committee. And you can see over here, what the action was. So this one is going to go to second reading, second reading, second reading. This one was referred to budget appropriations, so this obviously probably had a line item or some budget appropriations built in. So that's just a way for you to understand what that terminology is in the status column. If it's a three-letter acronym, it means that it's gone to a committee that fits that acronym. And if it is, so 2R is the second reading, 2RA is the second reading with amendments. So you can pretty much figure it out. It's very self-explanatory. But if not, you can always ask your legislative office to help you interpret those things. But in general, they are pretty easy to figure out if you know, if you can figure out acronyms. So I think that's it for me. If anybody has any quick questions, but I will be here till the end to take questions at the end too. But I want to make sure we can get Ashley in to talk about the important stuff that she's got to say.
Yeah, do you want to give Ashley a quick introduction, Mandy, and I'll switch the
Yeah.
Ashley, do you have any slides to share? It's not necessary, so no pressure, but I just out of curiosity wanted to. You can unmute and I will.
No
Mandy.
slides at all. I'm just winging it here. Do you want me to
Okay.
introduce myself, or was Mandy going to introduce?
I think Mandy was going to give you a quick.
I was going to give you an introduction, but you can introduce yourself if you prefer.
Whatever you guys have planned is fine with me.
Okay. So, we have Ashley Kerr from the New Jersey Farm Bureau with us, who is from a farm family in Central Jersey. And let's see, you have your graduate in environmental science or natural resource management or both. You have master's. She's very highly educated in all the things we're talking about. Was a global environmental consultant and a grant writer for the New Jersey Agricultural Society and has been with the Farm Bureau for nearly 10 years, right? Almost a decade, I think. Began as a research associate there, covering Mercer, Burlington, and Ocean County, and the State Board of Ag, but is now the state legislative director and the assistant editor to the newsletter, and has been involved in a lot of farmland preservation, right to farm protections, and now represents aquaculture and urban ag. Ashley, was this at the end about you're a spectacular party planner? Me too. We should plan a party together sometime. I party plan as a hobby, which is a weird thing to have a hobby. But thank you, Ashley, for being here with us today and helping people understand what goes on once your bill is live in Trenton.
So I'm lucky. I get to plan events as part of my job, which is why I threw that in there. Yeah, I've been with Farm Bureau almost 10 years. I started out as a research associate covering Mercer, Burlington, and Ocean counties. I also cover the State Board of Agriculture, which is represented by farmers throughout the state that serve 4-year terms and then advise the department and secretary. And I cover the state, it's called the SADC, which is the State Agricultural Development Committee, which is responsible for farmland preservation and right to farm. So I'm all over the place all the time, and now I do state legislation as well. I cover a really broad breadth of commodity types, and I mean, I wouldn't even just call it commodity types, also just groups. So we're a part of NOFA. I cover urban ag, aquaculture is one of our newest commodities, as well as specialty crops and all the traditional things you would expect. We also do wineries, breweries, and all of that. So we're a membership-supported nonprofit with over 5,000 farm, family, and agribusiness members. I just wanted to note for those who are on this call that we also have associate memberships for supporters of agriculture. The only thing is our weekly newsletter, which is really one of our best resources that goes over state and federal issues and upcoming events. That is for our regular members as well. So I just wouldn't want people to sign up as associates and think they were getting that. You would need a full membership for that newsletter. Today I'm here to talk to you about the state legislature and how to be involved. And I'm sorry that I missed the beginning part of this. So I'm sorry if any of this is redundant. When I signed in, I was really glad to see that you guys had the website up for the legislature because that's really the most helpful resource. As I think you guys have already gone over, you can sign up for email alerts when bills are dropped, either in certain committees or with certain keywords that you may have an interest in. On the website, you can find all the legislators, all the districts, all the bills that are dropped in any session, really, and all the committees and their membership and the bills that they're hearing. Another great thing about the website is you can log in live to listen, or you can also go back to their archived files to hear what was said in committees before. Now, Janine, let me know if I'm going off track from what you wanted me to talk about here. But once a bill is dropped, I think I'll go through that process and then just kind of the outreach you can do on the side when it's not for a certain bill. But once a bill is dropped, the first thing would be if there's an amendment that you're looking for that you think would make it better for your interest, the advice would be to reach out right away to the sponsors of the bill and their aides in their office. Once a bill is posted to committee, and you want it, and if you're going to go and testify and it's not just in support, if it's either in opposition or you would like to seek an amendment, I would highly advise that you reach out to the bill sponsors, all the committee members, and the aides associated with the committee. So each committee has majority office and minority office aides. So that would be like the Democratic caucus and the Republican caucus. And then they also have aides from OLS, which is the Office of Legislative Services, and they're the ones that actually write the bills.
Ashley, do you want me to screen share again with the Ledge website and bring up a committee so people can see what you're talking about?
Sure, if you want.
I was just going to ask the same question. We could show people where to find the aides for different committees. But go ahead, Ashley.
So if you scroll down, you'll see all the committee members, and then on the bottom of that will be the aides for the minority and majority offices and OLS. So if you're going to go and testify, and like I said, if it's not just a simple like thank you in support of the bill, if it's going to be in opposition or with an amendment, usually the best process would be to reach out to all these people at once, the sponsors, regardless of whether they're in the committee, and then the members of the committee and the aides. This way, when you get there, it's not a surprise. And I can't tell you how often I hear people in committees going and making testimony. And then those are the first questions that are raised by the committee members. Well, have you let anybody know this ahead of time? And it always comes back to, and have you talked to the sponsors? So this way you kind of have your ducks in a row and all your, I's dotted and T's crossed before you even get there. And you can also send your testimony ahead of time to all those people if you want. Let's see. Now, if things happen really fast, and especially with the lame duck session coming up after, which lame duck, if you're not familiar, is the time period after an election until the legislative session ends. So this year it'll be November until January, and stuff moves real fast and gets real crazy at this time. Same around budget time of the year. So sometimes bills get dropped or amended and moved really quickly. I'm not sure if somebody went through this before, so I'm sorry if they did, but you're going to have multiple chances. So if a bill goes through committee and is released from that first committee, if there's an appropriation attached to it, money, it needs to be heard by a second committee in that house. So that would be either the budget or appropriations committee. Then it's going to be on the floor of the House, at which time they can also do amendments. That's not really the best time for testimony, though, written or verbal. I would definitely suggest committees, but then it's going to move to the other house as well. And even if it moves to the other house in a form that you didn't like, you could still get those amendments done in the other house committee. And then let's say the assembly passed the bill without your amendments. They take it to the Senate committee. They incorporate your amendments. The Senate votes on the bill with the correct amendments. Then they take it back to the other house for concurrence, is how it works.
Can I ask a question, Ashley? You're mentioning amendments, okay? Different points at which you might want to, like when the bill first drops. If you're not aware that a bill is going to drop because you're not signed up for something like GovNet where you're getting a scan and a report of like, oh, a bill dropped that has your keyword in it. Like I would assume most of us on this call are not, aside from NJFDC, regular people are not really getting that, right? So if a new bill drops, you wouldn't really, if a new bill drops that has to do with your interest area, you wouldn't necessarily know unless unless you're part of an organization that's going to like flag that for you. And then you can look at it and let's say you're like, oh, this actually would be more helpful if it had this little tweak or that little tweak. When you're writing to the bill sponsor, the legislator that dropped the bill, that introduced the bill, you're writing to them and saying, I would like for you to consider this amendment. That's what you mean, just to clarify
Yeah.
for anyone
Yeah, I would like for you to consider this amendment, and here are the reasons why. And that's a good time to really include, you know, background information and numbers and statistics, among other things. I
Yeah.
would say that try to be positive always, even if you don't necessarily like the bill. You know, thank you for your interest in agriculture and for understanding that this change is needed. But here are some ways we think that you can make it better.
Uh-huh. Okay. Because they don't have to hear your amendment. I mean, they could read it and just say thank you, but they don't
Yeah,
have to
no, they don't
respond
have
necessarily.
to. And like also, like I was saying, always reach out to the bill sponsors in addition to the committee. Once it gets posted to a committee, they're probably going to release it. 9 times out of 10, unless there's huge opposition, they're going to release the bill from committee and they're going to say, you know, amendments can be made at the next step. I would advise you to reach out to the sponsors. And so that way, if you reach out to the sponsors ahead of time as well, the best case scenario is the sponsors ask for your amendments before the committee even, you know, gets there that day and they have them ready. Or if not, at least everybody's on the same page, because that's one of the easiest ways for them during a committee meeting to kind of kick the can down the road a little bit and say, you know, we're going to pass the bill out of committee today, but once it gets to this committee or goes to the other house, we could do amendments, but you need to make sure that the sponsors are okay with that.
That's really important to note. So really, the earlier you could get to the bill and read it and decide whether or not you think there should be amendments, the better. And so I guess the best way to do that is either be part of an organization that's going to alert you when there's a new bill dropped, or what? Is there an easy way to know when new bills are being dropped?
Check the website. Okay, if you go to the main page on the website, it has the calendar. Monday and Thursdays are always committee days. So like scroll back a couple months from when they were busy if you want to show everybody. And if you click on those days, it shows you the committees that are meeting and the bills that are being heard. So if you, let's say you weren't a part of the FDC or Farm Bureau, and so you weren't seeing it in our newsletter or their action alerts, you could simply just go to the legislature's website without being signed up for GovNet or anything like that, and just check the days when committees are meeting, and that would tell you what bills are being heard. Now, sometimes that can happen fast, like Friday, the agenda comes out for meetings that following Monday or Thursday. And that's just how it works.
It's just the way it is.
But
Sometimes on
yeah.
Sunday night you find out about a bill going to committee the next day on Monday. And obviously, even those of us who do advocacy full time, we can't necessarily drop everything and show up to a committee hearing. So there's some amount of scrambling that does happen, and you can't always be at every single thing. Unfortunately, unless you have like a giant staff of policy folks. But yeah, we looked at it earlier to look at the schedule and clicking on that. And like Farm Bureau, I'm sure, and other organizations, but NJFDC, we have a subscription to GovNet NJ. We have keywords in there. So when a new bill is introduced that aligns with our topic areas, we'll get a notification right away that a new bill's been introduced, and it gives us the opportunity to look at it and read it and see if we're going to maybe want some amendments or we're going to support it or what. And so that's something that being part of the advocacy organization does give you the leg up on actually knowing when bills are new and they're still able to be amended. Well, more easily amended, I guess, is how it should be phrased.
And like I would just say to be active, right? Check the legislature's website, even if you're not subscribed to any of these other things. And the most important thing is to have relationships with your legislative offices before the bills even arise, right? So that way, if there's a change that you see needed, you can ask them to drop a bill, or they can keep an eye out for something that, you know, maybe you're against that is in the pipeline, but that they would reach out to you once they heard that the bill was going to be heard in committee in the coming months. So it never hurts to ask for meetings with the legislators themselves or their aides, any time of year, and have that relationship building experience, because it's invaluable when things start to move. I'm guessing Lou probably filled you in on some of that. If you can, go to political fundraisers too. A little support goes a long way there as well. And I was kind of joking about my party planning skills, but we host a lot of events. We take legislators on a lot of field trips so they can actually like see tangibly what we're talking about here and what works and what doesn't work. And they love the site visits to help understand agriculture. It's great to get out of the office, and it puts a face to the name and an understanding of what you're talking about. So the more you can invite them to do things like that, the better. And I think one other thing that Janine had asked me to touch on is, like appropriate attire for all of these things. When you're doing site visits or field trips, as I call them, your farm clothes, casual attire is totally fine. When you go to office visits in the legislative district offices, I would suggest business casual. And when you're in the state house, know that everybody's going to be dressed up, suit and ties, professional attire.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a farmer coming in to give testimony, it's not out of the question to be just in farm clothes, but yeah, I mean, it's just one of the things that you don't want to be caught off guard about necessarily. Some people don't care, but it is the way that people tend to show up in legislative committee. You've covered a really lot for us, Ashley. And I'm just wondering, in our last couple of minutes before we pivot to questions, if you have any tips for folks driving to the state capitol for the first time. Where do you park? I mean, they're constantly changing things around there. Where do you suggest people park? How do you get in? I mean, we have some tips about that in our guide that I'm going to share the link to in a little bit, but what do you advise?
So there is a parking garage under the state house. That's where normally people go to park, and then you just walk up to the security booth. I believe that is free parking. Once you get there early, okay? Because if it's a committee day and there's a lot going on, if there are protests going on, there could be a line outside the door of the security booth for getting through there. And you're going to need a state ID that can be scanned, and obviously no weapons, but I mean, no nail files, no nail clippers. Somebody got stopped for having a metal mascara applicator. They're very strict. So to make your time going through there as quickly as possible, check your purse, bag, pockets before you get there for any of those things. I mean, if they stop you, they're just going to take it. And if you're lucky, you can swing through on your way back to get it.
Yeah, get there early is really good advice because it's a big building to navigate. Questions for any of our speakers? Thank you, Ashley. And you can put links in the chat to Farm Bureau. Mandy, feel free to put links in the chat to anything that you want people to know about. Same for Lou. And I'm sure there are questions out there. I'm curious how many folks listening in have ever met with or emailed or called their New Jersey lawmakers before? And if so, what have you called them about?
Thank you, Ashley. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
My pleasure. Sorry again, I was late.
No problem. We covered all things that you know about, so.
They had to put up with me yap until you got here.
Well,
yeah,
I liked your example of the honey and the cottage food rules because it makes it easy to show how they think everybody has the right intentions, but things can slip through the cracks that can make a process
or things can
really
be
difficult.
a surprise.
Yeah.
But it was very quickly amended with legislation that went on that perfect bill path, which is nice, but
Yeah. Things with appropriation seem to be a lot more difficult. We're going to have, so maybe now's a good time to talk about future sessions. So I don't want, we know there's lots of other topics to be covered, even just on the state legislative subject matter area. So we'll have some other sessions related to that, and then we're also going to expand out into local policy, local municipal advocacy at that level. We're not going to get into federal necessarily. That may have to be a whole other series. But Mandy, do you want to give a little bit of a teaser about the other parts that are coming up?
Yeah, so we've got two parts to this series that are similar. One will be very much laser focused on municipal and local level advocacy, how you can start in your own town and move out from there. We have another one that I've got slated out that will be on more of a regional and county level, working with your county government, with your county board of agriculture, so all of those things that are sort of on your county and regional level. So those are the two other parts of this series, and then we've got some more slated out, some more state level stuff upcoming. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I
If
think another important point is like the difference between a bill and a budget resolution, right? That's a whole, and then like budget resolution,
Yeah, I've got,
budget season, that's a whole other topic, is
oh yeah.
budget season.
So if I could just jump in for 1 second on our
Sure.
process. So like I said, Farm Bureau is a grassroots membership led organization, and we formulate our policies once a year through our annual convention, and that comes up through the county boards of agriculture. So each county, and if all this has been said before, please just stop me. But each
No, I have
county,
it on the screen here about county boards of
okay,
agriculture as
so each
additional ways
county
to
board of
engage.
agriculture is a monthly meeting with the farmers in the county, as well as a lot of the ag service providers. So the Department of Agriculture is there, Farm Bureau is there. Sometimes you have USDA, FSA, which is Farm Service Agency, and NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service. A lot of times somebody from NOFA is there. And it's a great place to meet the farmers in your town and also connect to these different groups with resources. We ask our county boards to send delegates every year to our annual convention. And before we have that convention, we have all the counties participate in our resolutions meeting process, where we go through our book of policies, what needs updates, and what people would like to see added or changed. Then that gets taken to our annual convention, where it is voted on by all the delegates, and that becomes our policy book for the year. When legislation comes up, we look to our policies to see, do we support, do we oppose, or what amendments are needed. If it's things that are not in our policies, then we take it to our board of directors, which is made up of a farmer that's nominated by their county board. And we have a director for each county in the state that has a county board. There, Hudson, and I think there's one other that don't, because they really don't have much or any agriculture at all. The Department of Ag has a similar process with delegates, and they do their resolutions that then get posted to their website. So the legislature is able to go to both of these resources, the Farm Bureau policies and the Department of Ag resolutions, to see what is brought forth from really a grassroots level of farmers throughout the state. And that kind of molds the legislation that we support and try to, support, amend, oppose, get through in that session.
And you can be part, just on the county board of agriculture thing, you can be part of your county board of agriculture and not be a farmer. You can be just interested and care about local agriculture and food access issues. I was a farmer when I joined my county board of agriculture, and was, well, when I was trying to become a voting member of my county board of agriculture. And then ironically, by the time I was able to become a voting member of my county board, I was no longer in farming. I was doing in this role now with NJ Food Democracy Collaborative. So you don't need to be working in the food system or working in agriculture to be a member of your county board. You could just care about these issues or related issues. So we are just at time. We thank you for being here. If you have follow-up questions, you can send them to me and we can try to get answers for you. We will share this, Mandy and I will combine our slides. We will share the slide deck alongside of the recording, which will be on YouTube in about a week once we get all that done. Round of applause and thanks and appreciation for our speakers. Thank you, Mandy, Ashley, and Lou, for your time and expertise. And thanks for being out there in the weeds, in the muck every day with state legislative processes. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And please share the information. And if it seemed a little bit overwhelming, just start somewhere. I think just creating a login on the NJ Ledge website and just starting to know and do some initial outreach to your lawmakers would be the first steps.